Hey, what's up guys, how's it going? It's Dakanoth Fisherman here, and today we're going to be playing a little bit of Lords Mobile. And one of the things that I wanted to cover was skillstones, because recently people were asking me about it, and I kind of come to discover that, I don't think anybody's really talked about them. At least not to a great extent. So something that, as you can tell, right, the gryphon skillstones are, they're one-time uses. Now, unlike a bunch of the other skillstones that I have here, these use resources and ANIMA, which is kind of nice, right? Because for most free-to-play, Gryphon is still going to be one of the few that almost everybody will be able to get access to, as long as they play the game long enough, right? Now, as of right now, it's about 2 million or so resources, and then, basically that's that, right? Now, moving on, the skillstone for Blackwing is 14 chaos cores. So if you're curious, how much is that going to cost you? It's 2.8 million. It's 18 chaos cores. Right? So if you're wondering, okay, so how am I going to get chaos cores? I've right now, the only way I can see you getting chaos cores is there are hell events that are specific, that if you look for them, occasionally there will be a chaos core based hell event it'll usually be on like the second rank of that hell event. But if you pay attention, usually they're merge pack events. They're very rare and they don't come often, but that's one way I can see getting chaos cores. The other way is Kingdom Tycoon, but granted, I don't really see getting chaos cores that often in Kingdom Tycoon, but it is an option. Now, having that said, ancient cores are kind of the same deal. Like, if you're having a hard time getting ancient cores, I would suggest just going straight for basically those hell events, right? But again, this is kind of the expected cost. Now, in the case of Untitled Titan, substantially less, right? It's only 6 cores. Queen Bee is 12 cores. Mecha Trojan is 18. Infernite, which is Pyrus, right? Again, he's a 5 ancient core ability, so it's still kind of difficult to obtain, but not as bad, right? And then you've got 24. That's like some of the most that we've got in this game, I think, for just about any familiar for that matter. There's 15 for the Frostwing ability. Huey Hops is 18, and then Bon Appetit is 10. So that's pretty much it when it comes to actually making skill stones in the game. Now, again, if you're curious about each individual familiar ability and what they do, I'll give you a really brief synopsis, which is to say that Bon Appetit basically destroys enemy resources. It'll kill a bank, basically. Huey Hops is like, you pop the ability and it allows you to basically get your leader for free once you attack somebody. So if you're rallying and you want to clear somebody's account without losing your leader, this is one way to do it. Frostwing slows down army travel speed. Grim Reaper is nothing more than an extreme version of Infernite, in that it will kill tier 4 units, or basically the highest unit type that they've got. Mecha Trojan is going to increase your coalition army size by, depending on what level you have it at, but it's as much as 300k, I think. Queen Bee is going to basically do Poison Sting, which kills troops in your enemy's barracks, and it will decrease the army attack. I've seen this ability used quite a bit, but it's not really that useful. Tidal Titan, which is to say that basically it'll relocate an enemy turf after a successful attack. Interesting, but it only activates once. So, kind of nice, kind of not, depending on how you go and feel about that. Mega Maggot is just going to drop enemy resource production, which is pretty useless. And then Blackwing, having one of the most extremely expensive abilities in the game, but it will automatically kill all of your enemy's wounded troops. You can get it up to 100%. It's pretty deadly, in my opinion. I ended up picking Blackwing over all of these other abilities just because of the sheer amount of volume that one skill stone can really provide for your buck. Now, having that said, then there's Gryphon, and obviously Gryphon just recalls all your troops, and when you have it upgraded, it's 6 seconds. That's pretty much it when it comes to making skill stones. Now, the thing about skill stone production, right, is that if you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to get the familiar set. And that means that you're going to need to work on your skill stone speed. Now, if you're wondering, what pieces of gear include this, it's the Blighted Vial for the most part. But there are a couple of other pieces that you can actually work on. And I'll show you just in a bit. But like here, you've got 3% from the Curse Mask. So like these two pieces here, for the most part, are really the only two pieces that really will bother with skill stone speed. Of course, the other thing that you can do to kind of improve your skill stone overall speed is obviously in the research itself, which I think is just right here. Now, I haven't really bothered with it, but you can get up to 20%, right? Which is not a bad deal. But seeing as how it's already 9 hours for a Gryphon ability stone, I'm like, okay, not really that big of a deal. But, I would feel differently when it came to doing like, like Blackwing. If I was doing them in bulk, I would feel certainly different about that. But that's kind of the gist with skill stone speed. And because of the fact that the familiar system is as new as it is, it wouldn't surprise me if that is something that they slightly change over time. Some other things to mention is that in the familiar pack 4, the Hoarder has a speed increase that you can grab. So that, again, these are just things that you can do to kind of increase that skill stone speed if that's something that you want to do. Having that said, though, I pretty much hope that covers at least the gist of kind of like what you want to aim for in regards to like the skill stones themselves. But if you want my like 2 cents, right? Kind of like, okay, so what familiars should I bother with if I'm going to be going for skill stones? I would say the only familiars in this game that, at least in skill stone variety, right, that have any interest, I think, to most pay-to-play players is going to be Blackwing and Huey Hobbs. Now, I could see an argument made for like Gargantua, and that Gargantua is going to give you an increase to your duration for Guild Fest quests, which is nice, but really isn't that important in comparison to like getting your leader for free and being able to kill a ton of troops. Just about anybody to everybody can get Mega Trojan, so that's really kind of not even a question, right? But these are things that you can think about and you can talk about. Knowing our luck, there probably will be more familiars, and that, I say that because when you get down to the list, they have 2 little spots here, which means, to me anyway, chances are they probably will have more, right? Now, if you kind of want an idea of like, okay, well, if I'm like a free to play and I'm not going to spend money on the Blackwing and the Huey app, what kind of familiar should I be bothering with? Now, I think depending on where you're at, right? If you're at pack 1 and pack 2, then I would probably take the time to get like Tempestite, for example, or Terrorite and Aquarius. These 3 are like probably the 3 top ones that I would grab. But once you get to like pack 2, pack 3, I would almost immediately grab Evil Weevil, because Evil Weevil's pretty great. The same could be said for Totemist. I mean, once you grab those guys, they're pretty darn useful. Harpy is pretty interesting in that Harpy gives you an extra shelter capacity, which for starter players, that may not be such a bad deal. If you're somebody that like struggles to avoid getting themselves zeroed on a regular basis and you need the extra shelter capacity, that's really not a bad deal. And something else to mention is Bonehead. Although Bonehead doesn't sound like a guy that you would want to have for a familiar, the one thing I love about this guy is it gives you Coliseum entries, and I'm still working on them myself, because the thing is that it's a really nice benefit to have to get another 5 or 6 entries in the Coliseum, because, well, obviously, if you're having a hard time getting down to the lower rankings, that's a really easy extra, it's like, it saves you 250 or so gems, basically. It's really not a bad benefit to have. But this is hopefully something that I would say, at least in that regard, that's what I would do. And as far as building setups go, I mean, like I've always said, when it comes to building setups, I mean, right now, at this point where I'm at, I'm not really particularly trying to speed mine up. I'm not trying to build a bunch of packs. I'm just kind of enjoying the familiar system. So I've kind of done this you know, 3 springs, 1 spire. You know, I'm not trying to rush anything, but if you're starting out, right, you want to have mostly springs, I would say, and then just a spire and 1 gem, just because the speed off of that alone is pretty decent. If you're training familiars, right, something that you want to probably do aside from like what I'm doing, where I'm like, oh, I'll just invest all of my familiar speed into 1 familiar at a time. What you probably want to do, and depending on how many heroes you have, like I have 41, but the most logical thing to do is actually split it in half, because then you're dividing your, you know, the absolute benefit. So I'll go down to like 20 or 21 and basically get 1 familiar going, and then the remaining 20 I'll put towards another familiar. That's like the most logical way to approach it. If you're wanting to increase your training speed for your familiars at the same time, it's a really useful way to go about doing that. Something else that although it's, I don't know, I guess it's not really talked about, but you know, when it comes to like all of the other familiars that I have access to in this game, something that, although I haven't really touched upon very often, the one thing that is kind of useful for me at the moment is Mega Maggot's barracks capacity. It's kind of useful to have that. I really found that, you know, if you're somebody that has 1 barrack and you've got like a substantially larger barracks capacity with the same training speed, that's just more troops that you're getting for the same training speed, which means you're basically getting more troops for essentially, you know, the same jazz. You know, it's like, it's really not such a bad thing to have. You know, obviously, since I've got Totemist all the way maxed, I mean, I could sit here and probably give this guy skill XP now if I want to, which I really wouldn't mind. Because honestly, the only thing I can get out of him now is 9,000 into this or 9,000 into that. And I really don't mind, because I'm a Timberstone hyper, so it really wouldn't hurt me either way. But, you know, obviously that's kind of how the familiar system is, and all the nitty-gritty things that I guess will somewhat help you, I think, at least in that regard. Of course, you know, something that I guess I should probably talk about is that if you're printing packs, right, and let's say you're doing like an enormous chunk, I will say that something that I did do in my past was I would spend like 100,000 gems on 6 million anima a piece, and I would get like 12, 18, 24 to like speed up. I'm gonna recommend you don't do that, because I found more often than I did anything else, it didn't help. If you're gonna be building up packs and then you're gonna do like a lot of them, you want to get this pack, the Mystic Merging pack. This pack here is a really good time saver, especially in the amount of anima that they give you. Like if you're wanting to do that in particular, I really do recommend you get this, because the amount of speeds you get and the amount of resources you get out of it is really not a bad deal. Plus, you get the merging pack speeds, which obviously, you know, and that in itself is a pretty decent deal. That's like the only pack that I've seen, though, in regards to merging speeds that I could like make a case for. You know, like, you know, obviously you can get like elixirs. Now, when I come to elixirs and stuff like that, I would say that the familiar training speed pack that they get for, you know, it's like $20, right? You know, the only thing about these packs is that, yeah, they're not cheap, right? It's quite a bit of money to be investing into these familiars, but it is a substantial boost when you do get it. Like, you can quickly go from like having a familiar at like level 50 to 60 pretty darn fast, especially if you devote it to 1 familiar. But again, I think you have to kind of value what is more important to you, and ultimately what do you want out of the game. But again, these are just suggestions, you know, needless to say, that I've done in the past, and I'm not going to deny I haven't done. So, but, you know, having that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks, you guys, for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time.